Hey, good morning everybody. Jason with Ben's Woodworking. Today I'm going to do a very quick video on how I go through the milling process for rough lumber. Reason being is because I'm currently working on a kitchen island that is going to have a walnut butcher block top. So yesterday I jointed about 80 board feet of rough walnut, and today all I'm going to be doing is going through and planing. So I figured I'd take this opportunity just to do a very quick video on the process that I take in order to mill up lumber so it is then usable. So I want to discuss the process that I go through real quick. Process that I go through is I'm going to joint one edge so I have a nice flat surface to reference off of. Then I'm going to run it through the planer so I have a uniform thickness using the jointed edge as a reference. So I have a uniform thickness all the way through. And then once I do that, then I'm going to joint one edge of the board. So then I have something to reference off of over at my table saw, so I have a uniform width for that specific board. It's not the way I always did it. It took me some trial and error to figure this out. The reason I bring it up and I think it's important is because I see people post on a lot of online sites like Facebook and Pinterest and other things, is they're looking for help because when they go to put their boards together for a tabletop glue up, there's large gaps and the wood bows, and majority of the time it's because it is a result of them using the jointer for both edges. And the reason why that won't work is because the jointer is designed to give you a flat surface, yes. However, it's a flat surface used as a reference for further cuts. So if I run this through the jointer, right, I'm gonna get a flat surface, and then if I flip it over and I now run this side through the jointer, it's not referencing off this, it's referencing off what is actually going on at the board. So a perfect example is if I joint this edge and now it's perfectly flat, and now I joint this edge and there's a bow like this. So it's not going to take anything off here, but it's going to start taking this off, it's going to start taking this off, it's going to start taking this off, and then that's going to continue to go down, and now you might have an edge that is not parallel to that edge, okay? So we use the jointer to get a flat line, and then we run it through the table saw or whatever other cutting device that you might have that you can use to cut it, but it has to reference off something, and that's what it's for. Much like if I'm going to do the face on the jointer, that is now a reference running through the planer in order to take the same material off the top and make it a perfectly flat surface. So same thing applies. Don't run one side and then flip it over and run the other side through and think that they're going to line up, because when you go to put your glue ups together, you're going to notice that that is not the case. And it took me a little while to figure that out. So real quick, I'm going to run this through. As you can see, it's some very rough walnut. This is a common 1 or 2 grade walnut, not first and seconds. Many of the lumber suppliers in my area, you can buy first and seconds. It's about 3 times the price, but the advantage to first and second grade lumber is obviously it is jointed on one side and planed on both sides to a standard uniform thickness. There's very little work that has to be done to it, if any at all. Really, you can just run it through your table saw and cut the desired length. But with the common grade, it is far, far less expensive. Downside is you have to do all the work on milling it up yourself, but luckily I enjoy doing that. So as you can see, what I like to do is I like to go through and look at all of my boards prior to ever running them through. Okay, it's a process that I take. I look for what direction the grain is running. I look for the orientation of the board, whether there's a bow, a twist, what it is, what's the best way to run it through the jointer. So in this circumstance, I don't know if you can see, but you see some yellow marks on there. I like to use white, however I ran out of my white pencil, so today I'm using a yellow pencil because it shows up on the walnut fairly well. So this is going to be the side that I'm going to run through, and then if you look at the end here, maybe hard to tell, I've got some yellow there. It's how the board cups, so like this. So as I run it through, it's going to take off the outsides mainly first, and then it'll work its way into the center. So it'll take a few passes, and I'll run that through now. Now before I begin, anything that I'm doing in my shop, I won't use dust collection with the exception of when I use the planer. Reason that is just cuts down on the noise for the video, but for the planer I don't want the chips flying into the camera. Only do what you're comfortable with doing. So just do that as a disclaimer now. Certain things I'm doing just for the video purposes, not common practices. but it makes it more easy to see and visible. So again, do what you're comfortable with doing. So first thing I'm going to do, run it through the joiner. So there you go, I jointed one side and got a few little ridges and stuff in it just because my joiner knives probably need to go ahead and be replaced, but it's nothing extreme and nothing that a light pass on the planer once I run it through will not take out. So nice and smooth bottom, nice flat surface, uniformed all the way throughout. So now the next step is to take it to the planer, run it through to get that desired thickness. And then so what I like to do is I'll run it through a couple of times until I look at it and I see, okay, I've gotten all the rough spots out. This one might take a little bit because it's got that rough spot up in the corner and it's slightly narrower than the rest of the board. So it'll probably take a few passes. There'll be light passes simply because of the fact that this is a hard wood and it is a DeWalt 13-inch planer. It does do a very good job. I don't have helical head in it yet. But still, I don't want it to bog down, and it will bog down a little bit easier with harder wood. Nothing it can't handle, but smaller passes will reduce the amount of chip out and tear out that'll come from the board. So I'm going to go ahead and run it through that now. I have a depth stop on here, and that depth stop allows me to not go any further than 3/4 of an inch. I won't make it to that depth stop for this because I'm not really concerned about its final width, as it is not going to be used as part of the butcher block top. However, it is there for if I do want to do 3/4 of an inch, which the majority of my pieces for my tabletop will be no smaller than 3/4 of an inch. I have a few that will have to go to 5/8 just because of how rough the lumber was. It took me a lot more passes on the joiner. But for this, I'm just going to run this through until it's a uniform thickness. So, I've run it through. If you noticed, I flipped it over to the other side on that last pass. And again, the reason I do that is because what it allows to take out some of those ridges made by my joiner. So it's just less sanding I have to do at the end. But again, the ridges are so minor that a very quick sanding with some 120 grit will take those things down right away. But the positive thing is that I didn't reach the 3/4 inch that I needed. So I was able to flip it back over and run it through, and it actually got rid of those ridges. So now I have a perfectly smooth, parallel surface to work with. So now the next thing that I need to do is I need to run one edge through the joiner. I need to edge join it now. So if I look at my board, I look to see how the board is running. So this side, the board actually kind of runs like this. So the top has a slight crown, the bottom runs like this. So this end and this end are going to touch the surface first. That's the end that I want to run through the joiner to joint the edge. So it's going to take off some here, it's going to take off some here, and it won't take off anything in the middle until it will be one continuous removal of material. So now I have three flat surfaces. I've got the face, I've got the other face, and then I've got this one edge. There's a knot on the edge, but again, I'm not worried about it. This is just for a demonstration. So there's not on the edge, however, that edge is flat. So the good thing about the jointer, the more you use it, the more you'll be able to kind of tell when it's ready to be removed from the jointer, because you can listen to it. So if you could tell in the video, the first like 5 or 6 passes was only taking material off the front and back, so I knew that this hadn't even been touched yet, so therefore it can't be a flat surface. You just keep running it through till you hear a continuous, even, uniform sound all the way through. Then you can start checking it, and now I have a reference surface. So again, this is going to be what rides against the table saw fence. Just like this rode against the bottom of the planer as a flat reference, so the knives would cut in a continuous motion all the way across, giving you a flat surface. When I edge jointed it, this flat edge was now up against the fence on the jointer, so I know it's perfectly 90 degrees because I know that my fence is 90 degrees, so as long as I place this flat against the fence, I know as I run it through, it's going to give me a nice 90-degree edge here. And that's exactly what it did. So now I'm going to take this over to the table saw. I'm going to cut it to width. For the purposes of this video, I'm simply just going to cut it so the edge of it is off. So I come over to my table saw. I'm going to take a look at about how wide it needs to be, just to give it a nice uniform width. Looks like it's going to be just under 4 3/4. So I've got, this is perfectly flush up against my fence. There is no visible gap. That's important because that's very similar to like if you're doing a tabletop. All right, so when you put these pieces together, you want to make sure that there is no visible lines. Now, if I was to do the same process with every board, as soon as I go to glue them up and put them together, when I lay them down next to each other, they're going to meet up exactly like it does here, as opposed to if I run both edges through the jointer, they may not be parallel. So you might have that gap at one end of the board, or you may have a gap in the middle. Now I know that my edges are parallel. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my table saw. Again, there's no dust collection, there's no guard, simply for the video purposes. All right, so there you have it. I have a usable piece of lumber that both edges are parallel with each other. It is a uniform thickness throughout, just over 3/4 of an inch in this case. And all I have to do now is go ahead and do it to the rest of the pieces. If I was making a tabletop, follow the exact same process, and then I go lay out all my boards on my assembly table, put them together, and they're good to go. Very, very minimal gaps, if any, between boards. So that's the process that I follow. Here's another board. Here's another board that I recently did, and if you look, I don't know if you'll be able to see, no visible gap. The edges line up perfectly. I can't see any light through, and that's a good thing, and that's what you're looking for. So by following those steps, I think your joining and planing and tabletop assemblies, or whatever you're doing, panel assemblies, will come out a lot better, a lot smoother. Please, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to go and answer them. Please like and subscribe to my page. I'm really trying to grow this page with the hopes that I can give some information that I've learned over the last couple of years to other people, and maybe get somebody motivated into woodworking. Because YouTube, honestly, for me, was probably one of the biggest things that got me to where I am today. And I appreciate everybody's hard work and efforts in making those videos to get me where I am now. So again, like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.